you can start to figure out how analytics work and how to see those numbers
That's
and
it.
understand those numbers, what's important, all those things. That's probably the next layer here. Not only just build your site and then you start figuring out how to those other components work, right?
And you're spot on. That is literally the next layer. Is what Matt's saying. If you're listening, is literally kind of starting to blend into the layer after that, which is learning the fun stuff is the due diligence. So it goes from building a site to, like what Matt's saying, is understanding how it all works, and Google Analytics in particular, because we use Google Analytics. We live and breathe by Google Analytics in website due diligence. And so then website due diligence, coming back to this is why our story earlier in this podcast was so important. Due diligence is a super, it's like a super skill, in money making. And you want to get it right. You don't want to make the mistakes we made back in our bricks and mortar businesses, because it's really easy as a buyer of any business, whether it's online or bricks and mortar, to get sucked into or to believe, I call it believing the good word of the seller. And it's always good. Okay. So I am yet to see a business out there that doesn't have some kind of a skeleton in the closet somewhere.
Because the domain is important, because that's also if traffic and revenue is there, right? You have to have that's coming through the domain, the address. So people are showing up at the house through the address.
That's exactly it. And the domain name is literally probably the most important thing, but everything else that goes with it's a whole package. But that domain name, some of those domain names are incredibly valuable, especially old registered ones. They're the gold.
Yeah.
We kept trying to build sites, and it was just slow. And to this day, we still love building websites from scratch. Please don't think that's not a valid strategy. It was just that Liz is impatient, and she just suddenly one day said, "This is so hard building these things, man. Why don't we do what we've always done, Matt? Let's just buy them." So there was no brokers back then. That Flipper didn't exist. None of that stuff. So no one knew back then. No one was buying or selling websites. Everyone just built them. So we just go, okay, well, let's do it how we've always done it. And the best way that we found buying bricks and mortar businesses was always private approach. So just quietly, not door knocking, but mailing them. Remember the thing called snail mail, the old fashioned envelope? We used to mail direct letters to people, very confidential, and say, hey, look, we're buyers of businesses. Do you want to have a discussion? And so we just did the same with websites, and it was a lot easier because literally in your pajamas, you just find out the email address of the website owner. You look through the niches that you want, that we knew were really good.
Hi, I'm Matt Levenhagen, founder of Unified Web Design, Unified Plugins, and your host of the Builders Podcast. Here on the Builders, our goal is to uncover the first principles behind building businesses, products, and services. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. And if you find value in our content, a like, share, or review is always appreciated. Let's dive in and explore the roots of innovation and progress together. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Matt Raad. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. Great to be here.
Two Matts today.
I know. I was just going to say it's an easy name for both of us to remember, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gonna be easy for everybody. Like, well, Matt's talking.
Yep. Yeah.
It's not going to be confusing at all. Who's talking? You could just say it's Matt. I don't know where I'm going with that. Anyway, so Matt, the other Matt. The Matt that taught, like, I'm the host, Matt, that's talking right now. So get used to that voice. All right. And the other Matt is the CEO and co-founder of eBusiness Institute in Australia, if you couldn't tell.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think we've had a few other guests from Australia. So this is not unusual for us, but it's always good to talk to somebody from down under or down somewhere.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So you, like, your big thing is buying and selling websites. That's your whole business model. How long have you been doing that?
Since 2008. So what, 16 odd years now. Is that right? Is my maths right there? Maybe longer.
You would be around that neighborhood. Yeah.
Yep. And we've been buying and selling bricks and mortar businesses for 30 odd years. So that's basically, so our I guess our career, we did it a little bit differently to most people. Most people generate wealth, by one business and buying real estate. We never really got into the real estate thing. We just got hooked on businesses. So we've just always bought and sold them. And in 2008, though, when the recession was on, and also when our kids were born, we realised, hang on a minute, why are we doing this with physical businesses? We can do this with online businesses and be at home, raise our kids, literally run businesses in our pajamas. It's awesome. So it was perfect. And that's why we did it, because we're also from the country. We were living in a rural part of Australia at the time.
Oh, okay.
And we just loved it. It was so much easier than bricks and mortar businesses, which may be of interest to your listeners, I'm guessing.
Yes, yeah. No, that's very cool. So we know why you did it. So you're like, oh, well, got the family's growing. And I can stay at home on my computer and spend more time with my family or do it as a family. So say we, so who's all involved with this? Well, the 30 year to the last 16 years, how does that look?
So that is, that's my wife, Liz. So we met at uni, would you believe, Matt, studying zoology. So we're Australian from the country. Both of us come from the country. And we were actually studying red kangaroos. So, the Aussie icon kangaroo. So we were destined to be experts in that. And when we met, we both realised we wanted freedom. She's from the country as well and always wanted to live in the country. And I always wanted financial freedom because I come from a background where we had nothing. And but I just didn't know how to do it at that point. And I thought, stupidly, naively, it would be fun becoming a zoologist and I can move back into the country and I'll figure out how to do something in business then. But we suddenly realised when we got into this, when you're a zoologist, basically you work for the government, and that's not a smart move. You're always at the whim of government funding and stuff, and even worse, you don't get to live in the country when you're a zoologist. You typically got to work out of, for a government organisation somewhere in a city, and it just didn't do it for us. We just thought this is useless, and I don't like red tape, never have done, and so we got an opportunity to buy a business. We knew nothing at all about business. And with the help of friends and family, we bought a small little manufacturing business. We just said, yes, let's do it. And because I always wanted a business as a kid, I'd always run little tiny things as a kid. And to put myself through uni, I had a fitness business and stuff like that. So that's my extent of business training. And when we bought this first business, what happened was we relied on the advice of an accountant in the due diligence, and it was just completely wrong. It was useless. Within a week of owning it, we realised this thing's going bankrupt. That's why the guy was selling it. So we made all the classic mistakes. So that's an important part of the story to this day. That's what drives us at the eBusiness Institute. That's why we love helping beginners. We specifically help beginners so that they don't make the stupid mistakes that we made when we first got in all those years ago. And it was a real baptism of fire. We were a lot younger then, and it didn't, I guess, we had no kids, and we're risk takers. Like we're happy to take risks with businesses, as evidenced by our track record after that, because we bought and sold many more. We didn't stop, but we did turn that business around. And what it taught us was we suddenly realised, hey, the good thing about doing science is it gives you an inquisitive mind. And we just had to figure out how to turn it around. So we also, from that first business, we got really good at turning around businesses. And we're just totally self-taught. And, the number one way we did it is just through good old-fashioned sales, hustle. And we learnt it off all the American sales classics back then. I just started reading books, and we went to business courses, and we just improved our knowledge. And that's how we did it. And we learnt off people like Tom Hopkins, Brian Tracy, and Zig Ziglar. They're the old sales greats from back in the 80s, 90s. And but it literally saved our bacon. And we did really well with that, and we did so well that we could buy and sell other businesses, and we just loved it. We were hooked. Even though the business was going bankrupt, within that first week, we were hooked. Both of us just said, we're never getting a job. This is awesome. We just love the buzz of business. And that's our kind of backstory. People always wonder, how the hell did you get into buying and selling online businesses? It was, in some ways, buying and selling online businesses for us at that point, we'd already been doing it, for 15 years buying and selling bricks and mortar businesses. So the online business thing was, I guess, in a way, a natural progression. And for us in particular, and this is the important bit for your listeners, if you're interested in having your own side hustle or a business, online business is just so much easier than bricks and mortar. It was like a walk in the park compared to, and nowhere near as much risk, because we don't buy big websites. You don't need to. We just went for high cash flow websites, and we literally just did exactly what we did with bricks and mortar businesses. We bought multiple ones, bolted them together, and built them up into a portfolio. And
so let me stop. Let's rewind a little bit to the bricks and mortar businesses. Now, were these all commercial properties, like manufacturing?
No. They were manufacturing businesses and wholesale import. So our first business was in outdoor power, so totally opposite the zoology, chainsaws and things, and brush cutters. You call them brush cutters in America. And to this day, I love that niche. So instead of being experts in...
No, go ahead. Yeah, finish your...
Instead of being experts on red kangaroos, we suddenly became experts in all things chainsaws and outdoor power. So, we got to know all the main brands like Stihl, Honda. So we ended up supplying. So we made brush cutter heads. So, whippersnippers, they also call them. The heads that go on the end that spin really fast. Yeah. We made those. And this was before China came on really big in manufacturing. So we also had that challenge as well. We had China just starting to copy all our heads. It was very challenging business to turn around. And very seasonal as well. So literally the worst kind of business you could probably buy as a young entrepreneur with no money. We're always in debt to the bank. We literally skated on the edge of bankruptcy for the whole 10 years or so that we owned that business. It was here's an important part of the story. If you're listening to this, I'm an expert at buying and selling those kind of businesses. That's what we did for more than 15 years. And what I noticed was, physical inventory style businesses like that, particularly manufacturing and wholesale import, they look impressive on the figures when you first look at them, but just be careful if you're tempted to get into one, because it's a massive, massive cash flow drain, having all that inventory tied up in a warehouse. And that was our biggest problem as young entrepreneurs. It really held us back. So that's why we always, I guess we did a Warren Buffett. We read all the books about Warren Buffett and investors, and also all our friends that we started hanging around other really successful business owners, and we just put every last cent that we had, literally every last cent that we had, back into the business. But of course it's tied up in a warehouse somewhere out in the typical and industrial area. We didn't own any of the warehousing or anything like that. We outsourced everything, even the manufacturing. We outsourced that. But it was always our money was tied up in a warehouse somewhere, and that's very unsettling. It's really challenging. So when we got online, here's why it's important though, Matt. When we got online, we made a pact with each other. We said we are never doing physical inventory-based businesses ever again. So people, when they hear our story, they just presume we buy Amazon sites or e-commerce sites. Never done it. We don't touch it. Don't even pretend to. You can make a lot of money, but don't care. And if you're a beginner, I'm going to be really blunt, don't do it. So it's just wait for the reasons I just said. It is very complex as a beginner to get into an e-commerce style business. And if you get stuck with the stock, it can send you out backwards, or it can cost you a lot of money. So whereas the sort of site we buy...
it's no different. It's no different than an offline business. You're going to have inventory if you have an e-commerce site. You're selling your own products.
Yep. So that's what's kind of shaped us to this day, and it's worked really well for us and our clients who we teach this stuff to. It's a lot safer way to do. And now isn't it funny, Matt? These days, side hustle is the big thing. Everyone wants a side hustle, especially corporate people and stuff. And I personally think this is the perfect side hustle to get into. It's not easy or anything like that. It's not a get rich quick thing, but it's the perfect side hustle. Yeah, it's the perfect one to build on the side though, without taking on the massive sort of risks that you would in a physical inventory style business.
So before we get into how to build that, because we have this building framework. So we, especially in season 2, which we're in now, where we're talking about building stuff. But one of the things I think, and it's still kind of open ended though, because there's a lot that goes into building stuff. If you really look at, like, I'm listening to your story, right? To build something and to start building something, there is, number one, a learning curve, like especially in that type of business where it's hardcore. And there's money involved, and there's investments involved, and there's inventory involved. There's a huge learning curve. But what you did is you fell in love. First of all, you fall in love with that thing. It's something you decided. When you did it together, you're like, this is really great. I'd never want to work for somebody ever again. This is my thing. But you failed. And you're like, well, but let's figure out why we failed and do it again and do it again and do it again and get better and better and better. Let's read Zig Ziglar and see what he says, which is one of my favorite authors back then. I used to have his cassettes and stuff.
Yeah, same. That's right. Yeah. He always pepped us up. And to this day, we still recommend people go and watch. I know, he's old school and everything, but far out, there's some good stuff from Zig and Tom Hopkins and Brian Tracy. They were kind of the 3 main ones that we used to listen to all their tapes. And it works. It taught us a lot because we knew nothing about sales. Yeah. So that was addictive in itself, just trying to get that right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. I mean, when you have a business idea, or your product ideas, whatever you're going to do, like, and you want to do it, but there's going to be gaps in your knowledge or abilities. And so alongside building this business, you have to have this lifelong learning kind of feel to kind of like the side hustle of learning, and that's part of it though. That's what you have to do. Like 25 years ago, I started a little contracting business. I thought because I did some woodworking when I was a kid with my dad, and I knew woodworking. I'm like, and I was an artist for a little while. I did painting. I'm like, painting, I can paint. If I can paint on canvas, I can paint houses, right? I could. But it didn't translate perfectly. And so I built a library of books, of home improvement books and things, and kind of learned on the job or from people I hired. I'd learn from them. But that's part of it though. When you're building something for the first time, or that's something you got to be comfortable with, is the learning part of it. So one of the things, so when I'm stuck on this part of it yet. So, when you're buying and selling physical properties or the manufacturing, did you over time you just kind of built a system around this, and what were the challenges around that? What did you figure out over those first 10, 15 years? Good question,
and it, like you're saying, that learning part was incredibly important for us, and I think. Admittedly, going to uni and doing science in particular teaches you that inquisitive mind, and so we were always. And also, sounds funny, but science taught us to try and systemize things, and that was important. And I think we kind of. When I look back at it now, I've got a feeling part of our success was we were good at that because we were trying to learn this stuff. And Matt, like you said, for your listeners. We didn't have, these days, I'd just be listening to your podcast, like the builders we loved hearing stories. We just what I also needed was role models of success for me. It wasn't just learning the how, because we were scientific, we kind of tweak, and in manufacturing, it's very system based when you think about it. You start out with literally nuts and bolts and a few other pieces, you bolt them together, and then it sits in a warehouse ready to go, and it's inventoried and it's catalogued. And then you've got to sell it, and then you've got to ship it, and you've got to export it. So because we were exporting as well. And so when you think about it, that's a system. So when you're scientifically minded, you just break down each bit and you try and get each bit as perfect as you can and optimize it. But then you layer on a business. And so we did figure out the way to systemize every single aspect of our business. And you're right, it was from just learning, trial and error, but in particular from having mentors as well. So one of the other ways we learned we learned the sales side from like the likes of Tommy Hopkins and Brian Tracy and stuff like that. And we went to a few courses. There wasn't a lot then. Whereas these days, I think it's easy to learn all that stuff because you can just listen to podcasts. But where we got the business experience and the nous, I guess, or we were just absorbing it all, was, I guess, the equivalent of listening to your podcast, but was actually physically hanging around these things called humans, like real people back then. We used to go and network it. So we joined a local manufacturing group here in Australia. And through that, there was all these other companies, and some of them were really successful and very niche in what they did. So we got to, you go to a business meeting in the morning for breakfast, and it was hosted by one of the universities in the outer suburbs. Those grungy industrial style suburbs. So that's where manufacturing happens, right? In industrial areas. So there was a university, it was called the University of Western Sydney, and they were based out in this industrial area. And they got behind this program to help, because typically in industrial areas, it's pretty rough, so they want to get behind the community and help everyone. And so they started this entrepreneurial type little networking group where they brought in manufacturing owners like us, and they just got them together to try and brainstorm. And basically the thing was, how are we going to compete with China? Because all this China was starting to flood us with cheap goods. They weren't high quality, but it's a big thing. And you guys have got exactly the same in America. Any of us manufacturers went through the same thing. This was in when was this? In the very early 90s. So it was a pretty tricky time for manufacturing. So the good thing that came out of that for me was, talking about learning, all of a sudden I grew up on farms, so I only knew farming. And so all of a sudden though, I'm around these really cool business owners who, successful, and I could talk to them. So that's where I realised, networking is how I'm going to learn this. So I just went on this, and I read in books and stuff, you should always network. So I just went on this mad spree of just networking with anyone I could in business. And that's when I started to meet millionaires, like really successful business owners. And one of the big pivotal things that Liz and I did, which I'm really glad we did do, we loved business so much. We started, and we're buying and selling quite a few. We started buying and selling for these high net worth entrepreneurs. And so we got involved in mergers and acquisitions and being business brokers. That was just eye-opening. That was game-changing for us. And so through that, talk about an education. So all of a sudden, I'm not now just networking with these guys. I'm either working for them or I'm negotiating against them, depending on what side of the buyer or seller was. And when I first got into that, the interesting thing is I thought, oh, cool, I'm going to be working with amazing sellers of these multi-million-dollar manufacturing or wholesale import. I'm going to learn everything about how they work. And what I realized was the people that I learnt the most off, though, was the buyers. Because for every one business that I'd sell, so I became an expert at selling these sorts of wholesale import businesses or manufacturing. For every one business that I sell, I'd be dealing with anywhere from 5 to 10 to 20 to 50 entrepreneurs. And these are all entrepreneurs that have got access to millions of dollars to buy these multi-million-dollar businesses I was selling. So that's when my learning went through the roof. So we would go out, I would take into industrial areas. We'd often meet up, sounds funny, we'd often meet at, talk about business building. Everything's done, it's got to be really confidential when you're selling these businesses. These are pretty big businesses, but they're in those, big industrial warehouses and stuff. So of course I meet these high net worth entrepreneurs in glamorous places like McDonald's, in the car parks. We go in, and because there's always parking, right? And it's a central easy spot. So you say, I'll meet you at this suburb in the McDonald's, just find the McDonald's. So this is before, you use mobile phones and stuff, believe it or not. And it was great. So you would not believe how much I learned how to value a business literally on the back of a napkin in a McDonald's. And I used to negotiate deals in McDonald's places because they needed to do it away from employees. And it's just funny. To this day, I love McDonald's, so that's where I got my real education in McDonald's, not from working in there, but from talking with all these guys. It was cool. And it was always, cool. As a young guy, it was always, if I needed to buy someone coffee, it was cheap, man. It was awesome. It was perfect. And there's no stress, and no one batted an eyelid. It was really cool. And, you in the middle of the day when you're at McDonald's, there's not a lot of people, so you could talk confidentially. And these guys literally, you always have a pen and paper, always had a notebook with me. And I'd say, okay, how are you valuing this business? Why is your offer only this? And they just literally, we sit there and work out the numbers on the back of envelopes, just mind blowing. And it was literally like, when you do those business courses, and I was living it, literally watching some very successful, these guys do it for a living. And that's what I always want to do, is become like them at that own these big portfolios. And so again, coming to the plug for online businesses, online, it's a lot easier to do that because you can buy small ones and bolt them together. So we literally copied the same thing that these guys did with bricks and mortar businesses, but we didn't need millions and millions of dollars. We could just do it with small websites. So it was just perfect. So it all kind of came together finally.
Yeah. No, we're gonna bridge right over to digital in a sec. Excuse the interruption, but I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the sponsors of the Builders Podcast, Unified Web Design and Unified Plugins. At Unified Web Design, we specialize in crafting custom websites and providing comprehensive design and development solutions to help businesses build a strong online presence. Unified Plugins offers a suite of WordPress tools designed to help you create beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive conversions. Explore how these services can elevate your digital projects by visiting unifiedwebdesign.com and unifiedplugins.com. Now back to our program. But I think this was great, because I think the education piece, the networking piece, and learning from real people, others, and others that are, and this can be, micro, macro. It's. I remember when I've done a lot of things in my life. I was an insurance agent for like a decade, and I remember and I was young, and I didn't know anything. And the guy I went to go work with, we had eventually partnered and had an independent agency together. David, I would sit just outside, just in earshot of his office, and I would just listen to him, how he would talk to people on the phone, whether that's people he was, customers, or it was somebody at the insurance agency and adjusters and all this. How would you have these conversations? And I would learn how to talk like that and think like that. Some things I was like, I don't want to know if I want to think like that, but it was,
Well, I got the same
that
thing.
kind of thing.
These were my heroes, I guess you call them, people I looked up to, because some of them I would read about in the financial press, which was just mind-blowing. Here I'm this kid from the country. Next thing you know, I'm in a McDonald's sitting opposite them, same guy that's this legend in business in Australia. Cool. I'm sitting opposite him, and he's telling me how much money he has, how he gets his funding. And then what we do is I typically take them, like you're saying, you listen to your partner. Like I would take him into the meeting with the business owners, and I would watch how these people would interact with them, what they would say to them, how they would even develop rapport. That's an important. I noticed these high net worth buyers were really good at straight away getting into finding common ground. They didn't even talk about the business at first, and then we might walk around the factory and look at things, and I'd listen really carefully to the questions they would ask. And then I'd figure out, okay, he's valuing the business as we're talking and walking. And you could, in the end, I could tell by the sorts of questions, because I do exactly the same thing. I'm like, okay, this is where all my manufacturing background comes in handy, because now I can walk into any factory and within 20 minutes, the owner doesn't even have to tell me their figures. I've pretty much got it dialed in how much the business is making and how much it's worth. And that comes purely from listening into how these guys would interact and the sorts of questions they would ask. And then, of course, the fun bit for me was watching how they negotiate with each other, buyer and seller, multimillionaires owning these wholesale. That was really cool, because there's a lot that goes into it in a business. It's not, sometimes they try and find common ground, like, hang on, you got cash on your balance sheet? How do we figure that one out? And just list things normal people wouldn't even consider. These guys just get straight into it. And if they want to make a deal happen, literally they would start negotiating there and then on the factory floor or at McDonald's or wherever it is, or in their office in the factory, whatever. Pretty cool conversations to listen in on. And you know, I'm always there with my notebook to note them down. It's awesome.
Well,
and
let's
so same
actually
sort of thing as what you experienced. Just getting to, so you imagine mine was on steroids though, Matt, because I got to listen to 5 to 10 to 20 odd different people like that. It was becoming a broker, if you're in the business, was probably the smartest thing I ever did.
Yeah. Yeah. Observing is just observing, just sitting back and listening, observing and seeing how people
for the education.
do.
And it was
100%.
just, and to this day, it's funny. Australia's a small place and business is a small place. Doesn't matter. And America's a small place as well. I still have those mentors, those people, they're now friends. I still know them and they remember. And often I notice when they introduce me, say, oh, this is Matt Raad. He helped me on a deal way back, 20 years ago and stuff. And it's pretty cool. One of them, two or three of them in particular, I do deals with them now at a different level though. So it's pretty cool.
Very nice.
Cool how it works. But networking's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's bridge over to talking about what you're doing today more. Like, so what, so you made the decision to, how did you discover websites like this as a model? Like, were you just online one day and you're like, that's a website. Can we buy and sell those? Or was there some program what inspired you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the online bit was largely driven by Liz, my wife. So she always wanted to be able to work from, not to be so dependent on going out into these industrial areas. We wanted to, and we were living in the country then, and it was a long commute into these industrial areas. And so we didn't want to be constantly doing that with and manufacturing was tough, and we knew it. It was very difficult because you're constantly reinvesting that money. So it was Liz that really started looking around, and she's way more technical than me. And we actually discovered the internet business space 2 years before we decided to pull the trigger. And the main thing that held us back then was the tech side, because both of us didn't really grow up with computers, and it really scared us. So we could see how people were making money, and particularly like with these advertising/affiliate sites. And we just realized very quickly, because Liz buys and sells businesses with me as well, both of us, as soon as we saw how you could do it online, it was kind of a baptism of fire as well. But we realized online was the way. So that was in the early 2000s, but the tech just put us off. So we just put it aside as too hard, but we kept watching it. And we did do a few courses. There wasn't much around then. But what happened was Liz decided to pull the trigger and said, all right, I'll start an online business. And so she hand built a website with code, and she'd never done it before. And I think her first one, she tried to hand code. And around then too, there was a program, I just know one of the first sites she built, it was built with an old program called Dreamweaver. Have you heard of that, Matt? You know it, don't you? Yeah, and it was, so you can appreciate back in the early 2000s, a bit challenging to use Dreamweaver, but she figured it out and she built this site, and it did nothing at first. And then luckily we had a mentor who had already made significant money online, and we were selling ebooks. So just selling, a $49 ebook. And the mentor said, no, you've actually done all right with that site. With online businesses, once you get them to a certain point, most people do give up. They don't realize just a bit more extra, a few more levers that you pull, and they can start making money. So we'd already got it to break even or whatever. And anyway, so it was, to give you an idea, I think the first big paycheck we got off that, and it literally was a check from ClickBank for $1,000 US, which to us was like, wow, this is cool. Didn't have to speak to anyone, didn't have to fill out export paperwork. There was no barriers. That money turned up in our bank account when we were asleep. It didn't turn up in our bank account back then. Sorry, they literally send you a physical check from America, but we earned that money while we were asleep. And that was the first threshold, the $1,000. And then very quickly she got that up to $5,000 a month. And that's when we realized this works. And we're looking, and so straight away, let's do what we've always done. Let's have a portfolio of these. So if we get 10 sites making $5,000 a month and they don't cost us that much, that's a serious income. So that was our goal, 10 sites. And it was Liz that came up with the idea. We kept trying to build sites and it was just slow. And to this day, we still love building websites from scratch. Please don't think that's not a valid strategy. It was just that Liz is impatient and she just suddenly one day said, this is so hard building these things. Man, why don't we do what we've always done, Matt? Let's just buy them. So there was no brokers back then. That Flipper didn't exist. None of that stuff. So no one knew. Back then, no one was buying or selling websites. Everyone just built them. So we just go, okay, well, let's do it how we've always done it. And the best way that we found buying bricks and mortar businesses was always private approach. So just quietly, not door knocking, but mailing them. Remember the thing called snail mail, the old fashioned envelope? We used to mail direct letters to people, very confidential, and say, hey, look, we're buyers of businesses. Do you want to have a discussion? And so we just did the same with websites, and it was a lot easier because literally in your pajamas, you just find out the email address of the website owner. You look through the niches that you want, that we knew were really good, and we literally would just send out email after email after email. And it's not a big win rate or anything like that, just like when you're fishing for bricks and mortar businesses to buy. But that's how we got launched. And it was very, very effective because in 2008, of course, this is when we really hooked into it. That's when the recession was on. So lots of people that had built up websites, we buy passion sites in like typically hobby niches or things like that. And people just realised, oh, hang on, there's a cash buyer. I can sell this thing for 10 grand or 20 grand or 50 grand cash. Let's talk to these people. So back then it was on Skype and literally it just went like that. It was so easy because we knew what we were doing. And we had a ball. It was awesome. And so that's how it started. It was more from Liz realising, hang on, this actually works. Why don't we just do what we've done, is buy and sell and build a portfolio of sites? So we just copied our mentors in bricks and mortar land, but we did it with online businesses. And you didn't need the high cash flows. You could buy really good sites we could buy any size site, but we like keeping the risk quite low. Particularly from our business background, we learned that was a smart thing, and we have an aversion to banks and heavy debt and stuff. So we just bought smaller websites and renovated them, and then we just applied what property flippers do. We literally just buy, renovate, and hold for the cash flows, and that's what we refined.
No kidding! Wow. So you. Obviously, again, there's a learning curve. You got to learn about websites and how they work, how domains work. Yep. Are you buying the domain with the website, or is that?
Yes, yeah. We buy the domain. Yes, very much so.
Okay. Yep. So that's kind of part of the brand or part of what you're buying.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's part of the value of what comes with it. So there's two big parts that we're looking for in a website is the domain and then all the files and the history, like the actual website. So the domain, if you're new to this, is kind of like the street address, if you're liking it to real estate, because I know a lot of people are real estate investors. So the domain name is kind of like the street address, and then the website that sits on it, that's like the house, and that's the bit that we renovate. And so that's what we want. And then over the years, obviously, we've refined the strategy, and it's had to evolve and change a bit as well. Right. But essentially, we still do the same thing as what we did back in 2008.
Because the domain is important, because that's also if traffic and revenue is there, right? You have to have that's coming through the domain, the address. So people are showing up at the house through the address.
Yeah, That's Yep. That's exactly it. And the domain name is literally probably the most important thing. But everything else that goes with it's a whole package. But that domain name, some of those domain names are incredibly valuable, especially old registered ones. They're the gold. Yeah. And we always just went for passion niches because people online, what we were taught back then, or what we realised, was online, it's different to bricks and mortar. When people it's kind of evolving a little bit now. It's interesting, but certainly the sort of sites that we're looking for, big inside tip here, is the sort of sites that answer questions. So people were online to answer questions. So they're online to learn how to get healthy, happy, or wealthy. So they were our three favourite niches. So we weren't buying sites that entertain people. We weren't buying sites that sell physical products out of Amazon or anything like that. It was just purely to help people answer questions. That we were just singly focused on that. So that meant it was easy to do keyword research and to figure out the niches. So we would buy sites in the golfing niche. What sort of sites? How to play golf better. Go and Google it, go and look at the keyword research. To this day, it's still an amazing niche. There is millions of people on the world that want to know how to play golf better. Any golfers out there know exactly what I'm talking about. But we went into crafting niches, gardening niches, travel niches. What are the best places to travel to if you're going to Thailand? So travel blogs. These days, food blogs are really popular. They're multi-million-dollar online businesses now, believe it or not, which is really shocking to us. We never did food blogs, but I'm just throwing that out there because I was wrong on that niche. That's the one niche we didn't get. But just anywhere where people are asking questions, looking for answers to certain questions. And the good thing is when you know the system, we figured out, like everyone does, you do keyword research. There's heaps of tools now that help you with that. They're low cost or free. You just use Google Keyword Planner tool. But it's easy to do keyword research. And it's easy to answer those questions because we're not writers. We just hire writers off a website called Upwork.com. Easy people. Well, there's heaps of places you can get writers, but these days it's even easier now. See, we just hired expert writers to write all these articles, and that's pretty much our renovation technique. Works really. It's a really very simple business model.
That it sounds like it. Yeah, there's so many layers to this and so many things to dig into. We can talk for hours, but I'm going to try to wrap this. I'm going to try. And plus, I've been on the web myself for 20 plus years, so I have a lot of things I could ask you and input and whatever. But let's do this though. So first of all, let's put ourselves in the shoes of somebody that. This sounds really interesting. Maybe they're unhappy in their job, or they don't have a job, or they need something. They're looking for a way to kind of build revenue. What does that person need day one? Or how do they enter into the space? Just the space in general, not the individual buying yet. Maybe we'll have time for that. But how do you get? Where do you start?
Really good question. To this day, my number one bit of advice is do what we did, is learn how to build a website. Believe it or not, we've got to go back to foundations. So every person that I know, we know a lot of very successful online entrepreneurs, including ourselves and all our clients and stuff like that. Every single one of them can hand build a website if they had to.
Nice.
So once you've got that skill under your belt, that then opens up your world because you understand how websites work, you understand how they can rank, you understand how you could potentially renovate them later on, you understand how they make money. It's very confusing. When you're brand new to this, it is very overwhelming. And everyone hears our story and they see the success of our clients and they all think, oh, cool, I can just jump onto a website broker, and buy a website straight away. Yes, you can, but you know nothing. You don't know what you're doing. That would be really dumb. Okay, I'm going to be blunt. Yeah. Seriously, your question is awesome. The best way to get started, and it will speed up your success at this, is just learn how to hand build a website. Funny how we come back to our roots, isn't it? And that's where this whole journey started for us, is Liz figuring out all those years ago how to hand build a website. We've dreamed about it. Don't worry if you listen to this. The good news is these days you don't have to do any of that hand coding that we had to learn. It's all done. Mostly we recommend learn WordPress because they're still technical. If you're listening to this, it is still quite technical, learning how to build websites in WordPress. But essentially, I've got to be careful here, but essentially it is click and drag to a degree compared to what the hand coding was with HTML and stuff that we used to do. Really, that's the first big step, I think. And in my opinion, and we see so much success with total beginners doing that. Everyone fights me on it. They all want to they think, I've got to learn how to do website due diligence. Well, how the hell are you going to do that if you don't know how to build a website first? Exactly, and if you haven't personally experienced changing a plugin or inserting a link or posting content, all that sort of stuff comes together when you build a website.
Yeah, and when I got started, many years ago, that was the first thing I did. I actually used Front Page.
Yeah.
That's even.
Yep. Yeah, so you've got the skills, Matt. You're going to be awesome. Yeah, that's the and look where that journey's taken you as well. That's the other cool thing with learning how to build a website. In this day and age, I think it opens up, it gives you security for the future. Just that skill alone,
Sure.
understanding how stuff works online is, I mean, besides being lots of fun, it it's it is security for the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you can build something for yourself, and not only that, I think what you gain from that is
Yeah.
not just the building, the coding, or maybe if it's WordPress, how to install it and how to install a theme and a plugin and
Yep.
what that's all about. But then just learning there's other components to this, right? Because I'm sure when you're going to buy somebody's property online, you have to not just know how it's built, but you probably have to know a little bit about SEO or how it's monetized. Maybe a little bit about affiliate marketing. Now, if you have your own website and you kind of build your own affiliate marketing site or sell something on a website, even if it's informational, you can start to figure out how analytics work and how to see those numbers
That's
and
it.
understand those numbers, what's important. All those things. That's probably the next layer here. Not only just build your site and then you start figuring out how those other components
Yep.
work, right?
And you're spot on. That is literally the next layer. Is what Matt's saying. If you're listening, is literally kind of starting to blend into the layer after that, which is learning the fun stuff is the due diligence. So it goes from building a site to, like what Matt's saying, is understanding how it all works, and Google Analytics in particular, because we use Google Analytics. We live and breathe by Google Analytics in website due diligence. And so then website due diligence, coming back to this is why our story earlier in this podcast was so important. Due diligence is a super, it's like a super skill, in money making. And you want to get it right. You don't want to make the mistakes we made back in our bricks and mortar businesses, because it's really easy as a buyer of any business, whether it's online or bricks and mortar, to get sucked into or to believe, I call it believing the good word of the seller, and it's always good. Okay, so I am yet to see a business out there that doesn't have some kind of a skeleton in the closet somewhere. And the cool thing with online businesses is when you know what you're doing, everything's tracked. Literally everything we do online is tracked now. So it's a lot easier. I'm not saying it's foolproof or anything, but it's a lot easier than bricks and mortar businesses to do due diligence. It's actually a lot of fun doing due diligence on websites, but it is a skill in and of itself. I mean, when you think about it, took us 30 years to really dial that one in. We're still learning, but it's something we're really passionate about, because we've seen a lot of people make big mistakes in due diligence, in acquiring all sorts of business, particularly beginners, and we don't want people doing that. So if you're listening to this, for goodness sake, don't just rush out there and buy, on these broker sites. The sites look awesome, and they probably are good for experienced people, but if you're not experienced, you need to know how to do diligence for you and for your skill set level. And we recommend you start really. So your next step is, when you buy your first site, keep it small. You can buy a simple little site under $5,000 or under $1,000 even. And it's not a problem at all. That's perfectly fine to live on. To learn on. And I'll give you a really cool example, Matt. It's just such a cool example. These at Nathan Alexa, they're laptop lifestylers, clients of ours that we've coached over many years. And they got really good at this whole process, building and buying websites. And they found a rundown website here in Australia off a guy. They were doing some outreach for backlinks. And they noticed this site. It's exactly what we teach people to look for. It hadn't been updated in years, and it was like from 2014. So they sent him an email and said, hey, we noticed you haven't, it's a gardening site on native Australian gardening. And they sent him an email and said, notice you haven't touched that website. What are you doing with it? Do you want to sell it? Like, we're cash buyers. We'd be interested in getting in the niche. They know nothing about gardening. And he came back to them and said, yeah, I was just going to close it. $400. So they bought it for $400. This is a 14-year-old website at the time, and it's mind-blowing. It had traffic, everything. That website now, they renovated it. They've added new content. They've refreshed it. They know how to monetize it. He was just a passionate guy about gardening, right? And he didn't really know how to monetize it. So to him, it wasn't making any money, so he just was happy to get rid of it. That thing now makes $4,000 a month. So we're coming into spring as we record this. It's literally making them $4,000 a month now. Nice income for a young couple living off a laptop.
Yeah.
So,
That's
and they
fantastic.
own a portfolio of those. They own multiples. They own another gardening site. Now they're keen on gardening, surprise, surprise. But they don't write the content because they're not gardeners. They've got 2 writers. But that's the sort of thing, they recognise that because of their experience, they realised that's an asset. That's a hugely valuable asset. So that's the other cool thing about this skill set. When you start looking around on the internet, you realise there's all these assets out there that people don't realise are worth money. And so you don't need to be spending big money. So Nathan and Alexa, they've never had to spend the big money to buy and sell these online businesses. You can buy really good sites for under $5,000 when you know what you're doing. You got to hunt around and sleuth around, but they're out there.
Sure. Looking for the deals. No, that's incredible. Yeah. It's like, it's just like real estate. You're buying something that's run down, or somebody's like they're too busy to even deal with it, but it's got so much potential. And I think that's one of the layers, right? Is well, you can have, there's got to be so many, well, I'm talking to you, but of course you know this, but there's got to be so many sites out there that get so much traffic, but the people that own it know nothing about how to monetize it or how to convert that to money. Yeah. And that's the piece that's missing. And if you're,
And that's the money-making skill. That's why it's worth investing your time to learn this. So this is not something you learn straight away, particularly if you don't come from a computer background. But that's our specialty, like giving ourselves a plug. But we teach. That's why we love teaching beginners. So there's lots of. So Matt, you're advanced. You would recognize those sites once you've tweaked it up and you'd know what you're looking for. But for beginners, we understand it can be an overwhelming world. There's a lot of moving parts to online business, it appears, but really they break down to just, I think they're way simpler than bricks and mortar businesses, in my opinion. Obviously, I've got a lot of experience and, I'm very, very confident with any kind of business. But seriously, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about getting into it, you've always wanted to own your own business, far out. Compared to all the bricks and mortar businesses, this stuff is way easier. And way less risk while you're learning. Just buy a little site under $1,000 to learn on. Like Nathan and Alexa bought their little gardening site. Just buy something simple to learn on. That's the easiest way, I reckon.
Yeah, and so the beautiful thing and why it's very, very valuable to have you on the show today is you probably help people do this.
Yep.
And you can shortcut all that experience, those years of ups and downs and failures and all that stuff. You've been there, you've done it, you've learned all the lessons, you see other people doing it, and you're the perfect person to learn from. So how do you help people? Do you got a website out there people can go to and learn? Yeah,
so we obviously sell a course around this, but seriously, just our free masterclass is more than enough to get an idea if this is something you want to pursue and do. So first and foremost, on the ebusinessinstitute.com.au, just go to the free masterclass. There's buttons all over it. You'll find it. And there's a free masterclass, and we talk about the course at the end of it, but you can just watch the first bit, and we show the sorts of sites we buy, where we buy them, and what we do to them, how we renovate them. And it's more than enough to give you an overview of how all this works and the kind of sites we're buying. That's the most important thing. Like I said, we don't buy e-commerce, so in that free masterclass, that's probably the easiest way to get going. Go and watch that.
Cool. And do you have, so we talked a little bit early on in this conversation about learning from others and not just books and tapes. Does anyone listen to tapes anymore? No. But
no, podcasts. It's all podcasts these days. Oh, we've got a podcast as well. People can listen to our podcast and listen to where basically we just interview our students. So you can, if you want inspirational stories, you can listen to our podcast as well. That's digitalinvestors.com.
Digitalinvestors.com.
Yeah. We've got lots of US clients now who do our courses. It's great. Like since COVID, we've suddenly been discovered in the US. It's great. Everyone, I think the side hustle thing is massive now. People are worried about their jobs. And honestly, I do see this as security for the future. It's an investment. You got to spend some time to learn this stuff. But we love the US is where we've made all our money, being blunt about it. We don't own sites here in Australia. We've always bought sites in the US. The US is the best marketplace to buy and sell websites, without a doubt.
Cool.
The US is...
Sorry, finish your thought. I'm cutting you off.
The US market is really, really well set up for affiliate offers and private affiliate offers. Yeah. And I don't think people in the rest of the world can appreciate just how advanced America is for this online business space. It is like, and for us, here we are in Australia, Matt, we've got like 30 million people, and that's our marketplace, right? All of a sudden, when we got online, no barriers whatsoever. We're straight into America, 330 million people. We're like kids in a candy shop. It was like Nirvana for us. We're going, what? Yeah. I don't have to fill out paperwork. I suddenly own a website in America, make money while I sleep, wake up in the morning and there's money in the bank account. So America's look at American sites. If you're American listening to this, you're laughing. There's really good, big tip. Watch late night American TV. We can't do that here because of the time zone. You just watch what are the products that are being promoted and you just Google to see if they've got affiliate offers. Easy. Yeah. That's very cool. That's the advantage of watching late night TV. I know no one does that anymore, but that's where we find some great affiliate offers. Just simple little things like that. America is really well set up for affiliate offers.
Go America.
Go America.
Well, what I was getting to was we talk about community. Do you have a community where people can through this course and stuff? Do you have like a I don't know, a Facebook group or forum?
Yeah, we've got a private. So for our course, for our students, so we do we do sell a course around training this. That is a big part of our business at eBusiness Institute, and we have private Facebook community for those members. And also we have coaches. So all our coaches are our successful students that do this. So they're the people that you see on our podcasts and stuff like Nathan and Alexa, they're coaches for us. We have laptop lifestylers that there's another young couple called Chris and Beck. They drive around Australia in a 4-wheel drive bus. They do the same thing. It's really cool. But then we tend to train not the younger people like those guys, they're young couples. We tend to train people like Liz and myself, our age group, older people who have kids and who are burnt out. So we've noticed since COVID there's a lot of burnout in society now, and here in Australia and in the US. And a lot of professional workers are also worried about their future job security, so they're just kind of retraining themselves. So eBusiness is set up to retrain people in digital skills. That's what we basically do. Nice. So we've been doing it since 2010. Training people we've been training people for 15 years, and we love it. It's what we all do. So all our coaches, our other coaches are kind of like us in a older age group, let's just say, and they've transitioned from full-time careers. That's our mission, is to help people get out of full-time careers safely.
Yeah, very cool. And if somebody wanted to connect with you directly, do you hang out anywhere on the World Wide Web, like LinkedIn or Twitter?
LinkedIn mainly. Don't try and connect with me on Facebook or anything. I don't really log into Facebook anymore. I really like LinkedIn. LinkedIn's pretty cool. Yeah. You can find me there. That's probably the easiest way. I am on Twitter a bit too, but mainly I don't really use, here in Australia we don't use Twitter as much. I should have. I'm kicking myself that I didn't get into Twitter all those years ago a lot more, but it's more, for us it's LinkedIn. For me personally, I quite like LinkedIn.
Yeah, me too. I've been on Twitter forever, and I just have a presence there. I'm not really active there much.
Yeah, I'm not
post
really
content there all the time. But,
So social media wise, I don't do a big social media thing except through our podcast and on our YouTube channel, which is with our podcast, just like how you've done it as well.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, Matt, thanks again for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for sharing all that amazing. It's inspired me. I keep thinking, I'm like, I want to go buy something now.
Love it.
I want to get that master class. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
you should.
But I'll see you. Yeah, I might actually, because I've been, like you said, I'm advanced. So I should be able to, this is a no-brainer for me, right?
Yeah, see, Matt, you'll have to get me back on and we can just kind of chat and everyone can listen into you and I geeking out on how we renovate these websites. So there you go. That could be, it'd be fun. I'm happy to have a chat to you about it.
Well, I obviously I'm having a hard time saying goodbye here, but because this is something I'm passionate. Like I feel like we could talk for hours, but we'll let you go. Thanks again.
Yeah.
Until next time.
But my pleasure, Matt. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And Unified Plugins offers tools to take your WordPress projects to the next level, helping you build beautiful websites, enhance functionality, and drive more conversions. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with somebody who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building with intention and creativity.